I'm good.
Good. Thank you for joining, and we have our
Nice to see you.
panelists on the online. Ms. Sama Al-Hajri from the UAE, Dr. Sudhir Mahajan from India, and Edwin Masulo from Philippines. So all the four panelists are here. So we are ready to start.
Good morning, Rose.
All right. I think we are ready to begin now. And just for everybody's information, this webinar is being recorded and we are also broadcasting it live on YouTube. So feel free to share the link on your social media channels if you may like to share it with your network and with your respective cooperators in your network. Welcome everybody to the webinar on future-proofing cooperatives in Asia and Pacific through innovation, a dialogue with Coop leaders. This dialogue is being organized as part of Coop Dialogue, a biannual publication launched by the ICA Asia and Pacific to discuss and deliberate on topics that concern cooperatives in the region and that are topical. The Coop Dialogue 2 May 22 issue will focus on the theme future-proofing cooperatives in Asia and Pacific through innovation. Innovation in cooperative business enterprises is driven by evolving member needs, increasing competition in the market, changing business goals, and debilitating external shocks such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Future-proofing of cooperatives is crucial to sustain cooperative businesses, build cooperatives' resilience, and ensure competency and relevance among members, community, and the market. We have with us today Coop leaders representing the Coop sector, India, Philippines, UAE, and New Zealand, who will share their views on innovations being carried out in their countries. I would now like to invite Mr. Balasubramanian Iyer, Regional Director of ICA Asian Pacific, to welcome our distinguished speakers and moderate the discussions.
Okay, thank you, Simran. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Let me begin by welcoming our speakers for this COP dialogue. We have with us Ms. Rose Henry. She is the CEO of Cooperative Business New Zealand, the apex organization for cooperatives in New Zealand. Mr. Edwin Bastillo, he's the CEO of the Philippines Cooperative Center in the Philippines, another apex organization representing cooperatives in the Philippines. Dr. Sudhir Mahajan, IAS, who's the Chief Executive of the National Cooperative Union of India, again, the apex organization for cooperatives in India. And Ms. Sama Al-Hajri, who's the Director of Cooperatives and Strategic Reserve at the Ministry of Economy, UAE. So this webinar has two parts. In the first part, we will look at innovation to future-proof cooperatives, and in the second, innovation to build resilience to meet evolving member needs. So each part has two questions, which I will address to each speaker. Again, this is an open session where we will take questions and comments from the audience, and I will direct it accordingly. So all those who are participating in this webinar, please feel free to post your comments and questions. Let me begin with first part, which is innovation to future-proof cooperatives. And let me begin with Rose Henry. Hello, Roz. New Zealand had set up a productivity commission to see how the country can develop a cohort of large, globally significant firms that can innovate and take new goods and services to the world. I understand that Cooperative Business New Zealand had made a submission to the Productivity Commission on behalf of cooperatives. Why did you feel it was important to make a submission? And how do you see the role of cooperatives in innovation as far as New Zealand goes?
Thanks for the question, Balu. I think the interesting thing here in New Zealand, just to set the scene, is that 18% of New Zealand's GDP is generated from cooperative businesses, and a significant proportion of them sit in the primary sector. So, and there is a view from the Productivity Commission report findings that these organisations are not at the end of the scale where they need to be in terms of productivity. And so we did put forward a submission because there was a sense that they actually weren't fully across the work that's been done around research and development here in New Zealand. There is a recognition, though, in New Zealand that we need to improve our productivity levels. We're one of the lowest returning productivity levels of an OECD country. So that's something that the government's very aware of and looking to do more work in. So obviously there was an inquiry done specifically around the primary sector and how do we incorporate greater levels of productivity. And we are seeing much greater investment by our co-op community, as I say, in research and development and innovation. I guess there's two sides of that coin, though. By investing in productivity and innovation, potentially that does impact employee numbers and the way of processing goods and services. So it's just getting that balance between the two. But right now in New Zealand, we've got a 3% unemployment rate. So we're probably in a good position to be investing in that type of thing.
And how do you see, as far as cooperatives go, the role they are playing in innovation?
So the role that they're playing in terms of innovation. So in terms of Cooperative Business New Zealand, we're actively engaging with the New Zealand government and our members to facilitate some of these core conversations. I guess the challenge for any cooperative is accessing funds and, to invest in these innovative activities. So you've got us lobbying on our members' behalf to ensure that their challenges are heard and understood by key stakeholders. But the other side of the coin is, do they increase the retained earnings to reinvest back into the business, or do they seek third-party investment? And what's interesting here in New Zealand is that we've got quite a low percentage of organisations that utilise external funding. Pretty much all of them are funded by their members. So, there is a big driver. And Bala, I think you're asking about what kind of innovations we're seeing. Look at EastPac. EastPac is one of our major packing co-ops here in New Zealand. It does all the kiwi fruit processing, and they've basically invested in very high-tech automated equipment. So that's, as I said, reducing reliance upon manual labour. We've got livestock improvement. Livestock improvement is basically a R&D research facility that focuses on improving herd productivity. And so they're looking at how do they move cow herds to meeting SDG goals. So how do they look at doing carbon emission reduction? How do they maximise milk production? So they're doing a whole lot of gene assessments and investing significantly in that area. We're also seeing a lot of retail members where they're focusing in terms of reduction of use of packaging, and then how do they reutilise or repurpose that packaging for other sources. And Fonterra obviously is the big player that most people will be aware of. They are moving pretty much all of their tanker fleet over the coming years to being electric. So there's quite a big move there as well. So there's a lot of change going on, and it's quite exciting, I have to say.
Thank you, Roz, for those examples. Let me move to the other end of the region. And I was telling earlier, we seem to have got the region covered, right, all the way from New Zealand to the Middle East. So let me address this question to Sama Al-Hajri from UAE. Sama, I understand the Ministry of Economy has a program to support the development of an innovation environment and to engage youth and individuals with creative ideas to provide distinct and practical solutions to develop government services and enhance the ease of flexibility of doing business in UAE. It is notable that the government is connecting innovation and youth So can you speak to the importance of innovation in the UAE? And also, how is the ministry looking at innovation as it relates to cooperatives?
Sure. Thank you, Badu. First of all, allow me to thank you for inviting me for this panel with the honored panelists with me here. Having such panel discussion addressing the importance of innovation when it comes to co-ops is something really important. Coming back to your question, there's two parts. When we talk about innovation and youth, so here in UAE, basically we look into innovation as a mandate when it comes to the government. Back in 2015, actually we launched a national strategy to enhance the innovation ecosystem. And when we look into the innovation ecosystem, basically we look into two parts, what we call as an input and output. The input basically is talking about what kind of initiatives that is done to the ecosystem. And then when we talk about the output, is basically what kind of the impact for such policies, regulation, and programs that has been launched, whether by the government or even by our partner. So if we're going to talk about the link between what is the importance when it comes to adapting innovation within co-ops or even within the companies, because when we talk about the innovation ecosystem in UAE, we look at that ecosystem as a holistic approach. What kind of agile regulation in doing business that would really enable the innovation to flourish, starting even from the academic entities, whether it is a school or even university. How can I really commercialize the patents into a commercial entities? And this is exactly where the challenge phase usually is faced during the innovation ecosystem. So starting from the academia, I would usually call that ecosystem as the golden triangle. What is the academia sector connected to the government as well as the industry? And the industry is basically where I would see the cooperatives and the companies and the social enterprises really moving forward. So when I talk about the innovation output, how can I really accelerate the impact when it comes to what kind of an outcome that I would expect from such an ecosystem? And here where the cooperative and the companies, or let's call it as an entrepreneurship processes that have to come into place. So as I mentioned before, we really had a very clear strategy when it comes to innovation, highlighting 7 sectors, and we consider those sectors as the priority. So I believe even we have several discussions with the ICA. Now we are going to have a very specialized focus on the cooperative sector. This is one of our actually targets that was set last year in 2020, where we really want to see a contribution of the co-op sector in the economy by, let's say, around 5% in the GDP in 2030. Why is that? Because basically we see huge potential in that sector. However, in the other side, we notice that especially when it comes to youth, there is a lack of awareness about the co-op. We know that there is a certain mindset going for the youth or even with a certain community segment that they still believe a co-op is a type of an entity that is only associated with let's say, trading or consumers. And this is where exactly the mindset that we are working towards in order to change that. This is when it comes to enabling the ecosystem for the cooperatives. However, from the governmental side, now you mentioned about even the revamping of the services. Now we are really moving towards a transformation in digital. Where can I really restructure my services to the co-op? Me as a government, what kind of services that I would really provide to the co-ops and the individuals in the community? How can I ease the process of establishing a co-op? How can I make it digital? How basically the customer, whether it is youth again or even a co-op, they won't really see what is going on in the back end. So this is exactly a major project that we are working as an integration between all the governmental entities, so we can really provide a very easy, quick process for the customer in order to establish or have any services related to the co-op. Coming to, and I won't really take time, but this is a very important point. Now, For me as a government, if I really don't have any clear direction when it comes to innovation, again, enabling my ecosystem, I won't really be able to enable the co-ops in that sector to embed and implement innovation. So coming to 2 points here, when I talk about innovation, I'm talking about 2 criteria here. What is exactly the objective of innovation? And the second thing is basically the organizational model supporting the innovation when it is related to the co-op. How am I government again? I need really to focus on enabling the ecosystem by a clear regulation, by a clear programs and initiatives. Tackling one of the major aspects now is basically the fund of co-op. You're going to ask me how. I would give you an example. Now we are looking really into innovative tools when it comes to financing co-op. We are talking about cryptocurrencies. We are talking about digital assets. We are talking about tokenization, how we can really set up a regulation with a clear governance for those co-ops so they can really proceed in having those tools available to get extra funds in an innovative financial tool.
Okay, thank you, Sama. I think a few points which you mentioned are very important, that you need to look at cooperatives as being entrepreneurial. The more entrepreneurial you are, the more you look at how do you be more efficient, and to be more efficient, you need to innovate. And also adding to it that you not only have to be entrepreneurial, but you also have to contribute to the economy. And there are certain targets. So then you have a goal in mind. But as a government, you're looking at saying, okay, how do I create the enabling environment? It's not just saying you need to contribute, but how do I enable you? And some of the things which you mentioned in terms of, but being clear about what the objectives are and how the tool you're going to use. So I think that's a good thing from a government perspective, how you're looking at enabling and growing cooperatives. Let me again move back again to the Philippines, to Edwin, who is from Edwin. I read that the Philippines Cooperative Development Plan, which the Cooperative Development Authority in the Philippines developed, one of the strategic goals is to make cooperative products globally competitive, both products and services, through technology and innovation. So as the apex body for cooperatives in the Philippines, can you speak to why innovation is seen as a strategic goal, and what is PCC doing to promote innovation?
Thank you, Director Balo. Well, of course, I would like to start from a quote by Heraclitus: "The only constant in life is change." So, frankly speaking, the Philippine Cooperative Center was originally formed as an agora of cooperatives where cooperatives meet and network with other stakeholders to advance the interests of the cooperative sector. The relationship between cooperatives and cooperatives, the cooperatives and other social enterprises, the cooperatives and the national government agencies are very important in the advent of digitalization. From the start, I think the one who maximize the technological advances are countries from the West, and Philippines, particularly the cooperative movement, lag behind when it comes to digitalization. That's why during the pandemic, we were able to realize that the importance of digitalization in pursuing the business agenda of the cooperatives is of utmost importance. That's why as the number one proponent of integration of the different functions of business cooperatives to form an ecosystem is on the way through digitalization. For example, we have cooperatives that are involved in financial transactions, but not most of the cooperatives in the Philippines are already supporting or are members of this, the likes of Kaya payment platform of NATCO Network, Digital Cooperative, the newly formed Federations of Cooperative, introducing a new business model where cooperative can transact online without face-to-face and so on and so forth. So we have this kind of consultations on how to interoperate these e-platforms among the financial cooperatives, and at the same time connecting them with other cooperatives involved in agriculture, in manufacturing, in marketing, and even utilities. So these are some of the initiatives we are doing through consultations, and hopefully in the next few years, we will have a good result on this. Second, as we all know, when pandemic struck globally, most of our cooperatives, particularly the micro, small, and medium cooperatives, are not prepared through digitalization. So what we did is that Federation of Cooperatives and Unions started to conduct trainings about digitalization. The simple use of Zoom, the simple use of Google Meet, the simple use of the transactions, particularly through the apps that were developed by several cooperatives, are part of the trainings that we are conducting. And in fact, even the virtual meetings we had is very important in pursuing our agenda in the cooperative sector, particularly in meeting national government agencies. We were able to maximize these e-platforms and virtual platforms to advance the agenda of the cooperatives, leading to the creation of policies that benefit the cooperative sector. For example, the creation of a cooperative development officer that is mandated in every local government unit. Second, we're able to mainstream that October of every year, we celebrate the cooperative month, leading to the recognition of the government that cooperatives are indeed effective conduit of the government in delivery of services to its people, and many others. The extensive use of technology is now also being espoused by the cooperatives, particularly where we need to introduce innovations about data gathering, about Co-op data registry, about programs relating to the marketing between agricultural cooperatives, establishing contacts with other cooperatives and agencies to ensure that their products are being sold and patronized by the cooperatives, the community, and the government. So these are the initiatives you are doing, considering that pandemic is still here. We need to embrace and practice this kind of technology in an ever-changing environment. So far, that I can contribute, Director Balu, regarding this discussion and innovation.
Thank you, Edwin. I think the emphasis on technology is important. And you did mention about the apps being developed, the platforms being used to enable. I think these are all important as we look to the future. Dr. Mahajan, since the time you have joined, we've seen that the National Cooperative Union of India has put in place several initiatives to promote entrepreneurship. Let me give a couple of examples. One is you've established the Cooperative Entrepreneurship Development Cell to identify innovative approaches. You've also had MOUs signed with the Fashion Design Council of India to design, to customize, upgrade products. and also MOU with the National Institute of Entrepreneurship and Small Business Development. All these are aimed at improving, upgrading, and making relevant products and processes. So you look like you've given innovation a priority. How do you see the relevance of innovation, and as the apex organization of one of the largest cooperative movements in the world, how are you promoting the message of innovation to cooperatives across India?
Good morning, Balu, and good morning, our distinguished panelists. We all know very well that we are going through very turbulent times, where everything is changing on such a fast pace that our mind can never cope up with the situations arising. World, why innovations are important. World, we know very well, from professional priorities to personal relationships, values to ideologies, beliefs to convictions. Whatever we perceive today, it takes a U-turn tomorrow. So this is applicable in all the different type of business models what we have, whether in the private sector or in the cooperative business model. You'd be astonished to know that there was a global business summit in 2016, where CEO of McKinsey, he made a very interesting remark. He said that in 35, the lifespan of any company used to be 90 years, and it has shrunk to 18 years in 2016. And now the scenario is every second week we are seeing so many companies backing off. So main reason which is attributed to the whole thing is the technological revolution which has taken place, the rapid industrialization, rapid urbanization, aging population, and COVID on the top. It has changed the rule of the game. Now everything has become online. Focus on online business, social media usage for business promotion. So these things have given a boost to the importance of marketing for the businesses as well. And 21st century, we all know very well, is an age of startups and innovations. And now innovation is no more a privilege. This has become a necessity. And if at all anybody has to stay in the game, one has to keep innovating. So business organizations which will not evolve, which will not innovate, which will not diversify, not address to customers' need, not provide a good experience to the customers, will be out of the race. So main challenge before cooperative is to build and retain their competitive advantages without giving up their ideological roots. And for cooperative, we know very well that members are their strength, and cooperatives need to establish strong bonds with the members, if at all they have to remain, and if they have to future-proof themselves. So, as we know very well that in the India, last year, Ministry of Cooperation has been established. Earlier, it used to be a department of one of the ministries. Now the entire focus is to strengthen the cooperative movement. And a call was given by Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Minister of Cooperation that if India has to be a 5 trillion economy by 2025, cooperative world of the country has to play a very, very major role in this process. So aligning with the vision of the government, NCUI has taken a number of initiatives in the recent past. Though our core mandate is education and training, that is dissemination of education and training, yet we expanded our base and introduced a number of new areas to address the need of thriving cooperatives, its members, with an objective of overall development and strengthening of the cooperative movement. As you rightly said, that we had initiated so many steps and we got into so many collaborations with all the national and international organizations. The purpose of setting up a cooperative entrepreneurship development cell was to make a paradigm shift from making cooperatives or formation of cooperatives to see to it that how cooperative does a good business. So our focus was on building sustainable business model by combining traditional with the modern technologies. Then we set up we provided a platform to the lesser known cooperatives and to the women-led cooperatives so that they can showcase and sell their produce in our headquarters. We have set up a platform there. Everything is being provided free of cost. Even their goods, when they get transported to this place, they are also free. And whatever proceeds are generated, that gets credited to the account of a particular cooperative society. So since these people, they always used to lack the design interventions so that their product could fetch more revenue, it can become more attractive. So we got in we got into collaboration with Fashion Design Council of India. Their guys are giving design intervention to the cluster where the products are being made, because these artisans, they have got a beautiful hand. They make amazing product, but marketing was a major issue. So we provided marketing platform in our headquarters, and for design intervention, the design thing is being done by the designers of the country. We got in touch with National Institute of Fashion Technology, again a premier institution for designs in the country. Their students also, they have a course curriculum where they have to develop a cluster. So this is second thing which we did. Then we wanted that the product should be having a global visibility. So we're trying to launch a app, that e-commerce, so that there's a direct interface between the buyer and the seller. And we also had a collaboration with the Export Promotion Council for Handicrafts. So these guys, they import goods, they produce, they buy goods from the artisans all over the country, and they export it. So again, is a platform where these people, they can be engaged nicely. Recently, we started an incubation center. Incubation center is imparting training to underprivileged women and youth, and they are generating new livelihood opportunities. So we have started with the 8 new skill programs, bioenzyme and embroidery, the stitching, paper mache, and we have partnered with Indian Institute of Technology. Again, is a premier technology institute, and they have a program which is called as a Rural Technology Action Group. So Rural Technology Action Group, they provide low-cost solutions to the challenges which different cooperatives have been facing. So this program is running in 7 IITs. So since we have 34 field projects, we are making cluster, and each cluster is going to be attached to one of the Indian Institute of Technology, their Rural Technology Collection Group. We also set up advisory councils here, where we got the people who are expert in their respective areas, in the area of natural farming, organic farming, agribusiness, and they're all technology enablers, basically. That is the purpose. Then we had a collaboration with German Development Corporation, because we wanted to emulate the good practices which they are doing in their country, and they being the professional bodies, and they've got a footprint in our country for the last 60 years. And the ecosystem in which they function, that is also by and large the same kind. So we are seeking a lot of assistance, and they are helping us professionally in designing course modules so that that could be replicated all across the country. We also started a WhatsApp chatbot. This is that, in case somebody is interested in forming a society, or the current one as well as the potential people. So what processes they have to go to, and how, and this is a 24/7 platform which can resolve their queries at any moment. Then we uploaded some videos on the YouTube, that what are the challenges of the cooperative, how cooperative business model is in place, and how you have to conduct your business. So this is the very, very simple language which is understandable to all the people who are trying to get into this. Another good initiative which we took is addressing the concerns of the vulnerable section of the society. There's an organization by the name of Alliance India. They are into taking or addressing the issues of transgenders, because transgenders, basically they are either into the begging or into the sex trade, and they contract all kind of diseases. So these people, what they were doing, they were only addressing their issue of how these people, they could be in case somebody falls sick, so what medical aid has to be provided and all that. But the cycle was not getting broken. So we have given a sort of twist to the whole story, that how alternative business model could be created for this section of the society. So we came to know in one of our states that some people have joined hands and they started a dairy. So same kind of model we want to replicate, so that they can have a self-esteem and they can start leading a better life, and the vicious cycle can also be broken, and they will be having a alternative livelihood opportunities. So like this, and then also we got in touch with the National Street Vendor Association of India. We had a collaboration with them. So street vending is again, because a huge number, and so all the states, they have this kind of street vendors there. So we're trying to form their cooperative, and we are trying to mainstream them in our whole thing, that how their homemakers who are back there not doing anything, so they could be taken to our incubation center where they can get the skill training, so they can also be earning hand along with the men folks who are already into the business. Then another initiative which we took is, we out here we recruited some interns. Because when this COVID thing was on, so colleges, they were not functioning physically, so everything was going online. So we gave an ad, and we got a lot of applications. A lot of people got interested in working with our organization. Through interns, we motivated many youth. How can you be into the cooperative fold? Because in our country, the youth cooperative, barring in Kerala, that's not a very successful thing. So we thought that why not to involve these people and to tell them the benefit of cooperative way of business, how this is going to be helpful. So we conducted few programs, because youth, they don't feel like listening to the lectures. So we switched over to the dance competition. We also had a skit, basically with the cooperative as a theme. Then we conducted some seminars where these people, they could participate, and they could also submit some research papers that why cooperative business model is the most successful business model. So I found a lot of enthusiasm in all these people, and shortest possible time, we could connect with more than 5,000 youth from Delhi itself. In Delhi University, all these people, they were heavily in touch with us. So this is a way, which we all, in the last 1 year, there are a few things which we have initiated, and we are aligning ourselves with the goal which Government of India has set up before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahajan. That was quite a broad perspective, and right from youth to vulnerable population to the way in which you're getting them mainstream. Thank you for that. Roz, we heard the other panelists mention about technology and how innovation is happening in that space. So can you talk about in New Zealand, can you give specific examples of how technology is being used by cooperatives, and also in the services area, because that's something which we're seeing. There is more growth potential for cooperatives. Historically have been in agriculture and credit, but services is growing rapidly, and that's where young people are interested. So can you give some examples from New Zealand on technology and the services area?
Yeah, I think very much like what we've heard, there's a lot of investment in technology. So that's really where it's at right now. And New Zealand's sort of still in a semi-state of lockdown, believe it or not, 2 years later. So we have had to move a lot of our business online, and that's been quite interesting, because what we're seeing is a lot of those service industries doing this type of working. So I think this is actually going to become something that's very embedded into our psyche long term. I don't think this is going to be, we get through the end of COVID and we stop operating in this way. So it's quite acceptable now to do business in this way. So the services industry is interesting, and as you say, Balu, it's about the younger generation coming through and what they would like to be doing. The challenge for us right now is what we're anticipating is possibly a massive exodus now that the borders are opening up of that younger generation. What we're seeing right now here in New Zealand as a result of post-pandemic, or if you can call it post-pandemic, some of the issues facing us right now is around the supply chain and the impact on operations, given where New Zealand is located globally. And there's a lot of delays due to congestion and high prices and elevated consumer demand for constrained capacity. And I mentioned before about that access to skilled and unskilled labour, because we've got such a low unemployment rate. So I think we're going to see, as I say, quite a significant exit. And the reason for that is here in New Zealand, I'm sure we're seeing it internationally as well, is cost of living has just absolutely blown out. We're just seeing rapid inflation, and I think these younger ones are recognising that for them to actually have quality of life, it's going to be very difficult if they stay on in New Zealand. So we are seeing quite a big exodus. We're seeing quite a lot of legislative change, which to your question there, Balu, about the services industries, that's got quite a positive thing, probably for the financial services and banking sector. There's more of a recognition of the need to have competition in that mutuals space. So trying to make it easier for those businesses to be competitive. So right now we're seeing, but on top of that, we're also seeing a lot of compliance requirements around fair pay agreements, etc. So, while businesses are trying to rebuild post-COVID, we're also trying to increase, salaries, but in conjunction, we've also got cost of living going up. So it's a bit of a snowball effect, and it's hard to sort of see where that's all going to play out in the next little while. So I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, but as you say, the services industry is growing. I'm getting a lot more inquiries from new startups wanting to establish businesses in those sort of areas and professional services. So that definitely will impact in terms of improved productivity. So that's probably where we're at right now.
Okay, thanks, Roz. Sama, how about in the UAE? Are there specific examples that you can give in terms of innovation in general and in cooperatives in particular?
Oh, yeah, sure. So for this question, I would I would wear two hats in this case, because there are innovations was really driven by COVID when last year in 2020, the COVID hit, let's say, the world. So there is a lot of co-ops, especially consumer, had really to transform technologically and digitally when it comes to providing the products to the members, to aid the process to access to food. So this was the beginning. However, we were really happy actually for the past few months, because we are seeing some of the cases of innovation that was, whether it is under testing or pilot or even launch. So I'll speak about some of the examples, then I'm going to talk about one of the cases as well we would consider as an innovation approach that we are taking here as a government and raising the awareness to the community. So let me start first with the co-ops. So we have one of the upcoming major innovation and one of the largest co-op we have here in UAE. It is Union Co-op. Basically, they are using the VR, the virtual reality technology. They are working on a whole application and a platform where they can give a real experience to the members while they are at home. So they can go through the experience of walking through the store itself, buying the product, looking into the product itself. So it's like a real example where you are in the store. However, you are still buying it like you are buying on the platform itself. A second innovation, which is again very interesting, there's a couple of co-ops that we are working with because we launched our circular economy policy back in 2021. So there are two major projects going with several of those co-ops where they are moving to the paperless strategy. So they are digitalizing all of those processes. There is the strategy of no papers anymore. We are really trying to reduce the waste of papers, how we can really, utilize the current technology. So this is another project that is ongoing. One of the projects as well using the IoTs, the Internet of Things, basically for the fleet of trucks. So they basically are measuring the fleet, where exactly the destination, what kind of, or the amount of fuel that has been consumed, the temperature of the refrigerator. So why it is important? Because again, very important point, when we introduce innovation, we believe that it's not kind of a luxury again. It's something that will fill a basic need or a challenge that has been faced by those co-ops. So another interesting example again on those co-ops is basically the machine learning and AI. So we looked into a system for one of the co-ops where they are trying to utilize the AI where it can really do the whole analysis of the consumer behavior. The segmentation of the customers, that would really allow them to know exactly on what strategy to focus on. And we see this as a major because I believe one of the discussions is how we really can ensure the resilience of those co-ops is basically on the forecast. We still look into co-op as, let's say, part of it as an economic entity. So they have really to implement such a foresighting strategies. They really need to know or expect what might happen in the market. So they are not a sector that is isolated on what is going on in the economy. So this is when it comes to the technological innovation. We have one of the co-ops recently established, and by the way, we are really early, in an early stage when it comes to co-ops comparing to the countries that we have here with us in the panel. So we have one of the co-ops, it is a social-based cooperative. They are looking more into the social activities to the community. They introduced innovation in their processes and the model itself. So they established kind of what they call as a department of members' happiness. What is exactly the objective of that is basically to make sure that the members are aligned with the strategy of the co-op. They are really satisfied with the services that is provided by the co-op. And we see this as a very interesting model because, again, we are looking into all the co-ops in the country. What we are trying to do is basically to enhance the capacities among all. So when we see a very interesting innovation in our practice happening in one of the co-op, we are really trying to transfer that knowledge or mimic that model to other co-ops that really can proceed with. Talking about one of the, I would call it as an innovation approach that we are doing as a government. We mentioned before that one of the major challenges we have here in UAE is basically the awareness about co-op, the mindset about the co-op. So we know that there's a multiple approach when you approach community to raise their awareness, whether it's by ads, by workshops, but in this aspect, exactly, we are doing something different. So we are thinking of developing a new identity for the co-op. However, to proceed further into that, we are using what you call it as an economic behavioral science, or the nudge, the concept of nudge. This is something that we are piloting now. We are trying to approach, especially again, to different segments of the community, youth, women, elderly, even like the normal as well. So we are trying to do kind of a different intervention in the way that we approach people on how to encourage them to become members, how they can really establish further co-ops when it comes to new models, to new sectors as well. So again, from government, we are going through a process of design thinking. We are taking different personas when we are analyzing those behavioral, so we can really introduce the right intervention to those nudges. Maybe, Bali, you noticed recently also, we are approaching the community through social media, and this is a new approach. This is one of the nudge tools that we are working with, is utilizing what we call as an ideal or the social idol. So we are trying to pick up a certain influencers for certain segments, again, whether it is youth or even a normal segment in the community within a specific age. And we are really collaborating with those influencers to send certain messages to the community itself. So we just started that project, and we really are expecting good results from that. Before I end my point here, however, as a government, if we're going to talk about the innovation process, there is one of the important points that we are noticing happening not only in co-ops, but even in the other enterprises, is basically why some innovations fail. And this is kind of the understanding, let's say that, again, there is a lack of understanding when it comes to implementation of those innovations. Part of it is basically that we have to expect failures when it comes to new innovation, because this is exactly the process where basically you, let's say, ideate, do the ideation, then develop, prototype it, test it, and fail, then enhance. So this is one of the things that basically co-ops, I would say, need to understand, that it is a continuous process to improve. But here, to the other part is basically, we notice that there are some of the innovative projects happening without a proper R&D. And when I talk about research and development, to me, this is something really major and a baseline for any innovation ecosystem. If I have a strong R&D within my entity, let's say I'm a co-op, I have to adapt the culture of continuous R&D when it comes to developing my products, my services to the customers, or even within my own systems and processes. And this is something that we really noticed, that a lot of great ideas don't really see the light in a mature stage, because the stage of R&D and analysis was not done correctly. So if you're going to ask me, Balu, then what you guys are doing in order to enhance or fix the process there, basically we are now working, and soon there's one of the strategic projects that we're going to launch in the country, has a specific pillar of building capacity for those co-ops, especially when it comes to managing the co-op itself, introducing innovation, as well as to expand to the growth level and expanding further to have a greater impact when it comes to economy and social aspects as well. So this is from our side, Balu.
Thanks a lot, Sama. Edwin, from your side, are there, can you share some specific examples of cooperatives which are active in innovating, and both either in terms of products or services?
Yes, thank you, Director Balu. I have at least 2 points here. One is technological, and the other one is ideological. As far as technological is concerned, there is an ongoing development of cooperative products, which recently was registered at the Cooperative Development Center regarding a digital cooperative that caters to different types of cooperatives when it comes to servicing the usual programs introduced by financial institutions, commercial financial institutions, like the e-wallet, the so-called, the term GCash, PayMaya, and so on and so forth. The digital cooperative, or the DigiCoop, started to develop this kind of program, where it focused on some of the core banking system, and at the same time expanded it to include e-platforms regarding governance, regarding financial management system, and for example, the business management as well. It is now operating, and apparently more and more cooperatives are participating into it. Now, the intention of the Philippine Cooperative Center is how would this DigiCoop and the NatCo network, together with other financial cooperatives, interoperate among themselves to ensure that the services being provided to the cooperatives will somehow match the services provided by the commercial banks. We are trying to introduce the idea that eventually the cooperative bank should be the consolidator and the settlement institutions of all cooperatives participating in this business type of cooperatives. So that's one. Number two, of course, we are now also introducing the Co-op Data Registry. The Philippine Cooperative Center, led by Chair Gary Leonardo, and the Board of Directors of the Philippine Cooperative Center, is now in discussion with several institutions to partner with us in the creation of the Co-op Data Registry, its infrastructure, and other areas where we can initially develop this Co-op Data Registry, where the most important aspect of this is direction and strategy setting. As a result of the analytics, we'll be able to formulate policy proposals. It will help cooperatives, particularly those in credit, to have to identify their risk when it comes to business. We will able to introduce the product and service development and providing economic and social services, measuring the movement's contribution to economic development. Right now, we are in the verge of discussing the framework on how to develop a paper enumerating the social impact of cooperatives in the Philippine economy. We intend to release the initial stage of research sometime in October. Second is ideological. The promotion of cooperative ideology is very important, that we are different from a corporation, that we are different from a social enterprise, because we in cooperatives, we have the principles and values of cooperativism that we need to integrate in all of our modules and education and trainings that we are conducting. So as what Sister Sama mentioned, these are very important in the change of mindset, because we do not want to happen in the near future that the thinking and likeness of some cooperative leaders will be corporatist in nature. We should differentiate ourselves from a corporate setup to a cooperative setup, where we should differentiate our business type model to a corporate type of model in business. So this is one of the change of mindset we are doing, particularly in all our trainings that we are conducting. And lastly, in relation to new approaches, particularly in the ideas, the cooperative vote, Director Balu and everyone, is a fresh approach in an attempt to unite the cooperative sector towards a common legislative agenda that will promote the welfare of cooperatives and the promotion of cooperative enterprise as a viable alternative to the status quo. Right now, we have the Solidarity Covenant signed by Senator Mig Zubiri and Senator Riza Ontiveros, the chairperson and vice chairperson of the Senate Committee on Cooperatives, which you met when you visited here in the Philippines, together with President Ariel Guarco. And also the Co-op NATCO party list also signed the Solidarity Covenant and the AGA party list, wherein we were able to enumerate 16 legislative common priority agendas for the promotion of cooperatives in the Philippines. This is a very important development, because this coming election in May, because of this Solidarity Covenant, we're able to consolidate our forces and conduct our trainings and orientations about cooperative vote. This is the first time that we attempted, after several years of participating in the national election, the concept of cooperative vote. As part of our continuing action, we are developing our strengths and abilities, not only to be recognized by the government in a role in the nation building, but also as active participants in the crafting of policies and laws. As you all know, the cooperative sector, particularly led by PCC, always sits in any technical working group being called by Congress and national government agencies in formulating policies that would affect or benefit the cooperative sector. So these are the three major items, I think, that we contributed in the last 12 months. And one thing more, we are now also in discussion, hopefully with the Cooperative Development Authority, to complement this data registry gathering. So hopefully, in the next few months after the national election, we will be discussing this kind of project with the Cooperative Development Authority, of course, in partnership with the academe, in partnership with the federations and unions of cooperatives in the Philippines, including other social enterprises. Thank you, Balu.
Thank you, Edwin. Dr. Mahajan, a couple of examples from India where you're saying cooperatives innovate. in recent times?
See, while documenting success stories and best practices at an NCO level, we came across so many cooperatives which are making fantastic products and they are into very nice processes, but they're yet to make a mark. So I would like to name a couple of them. Definitely, they'll also, in shortest possible time, would achieve the status of a iconic cooperatives. But currently, whatever we have, which could make a mark and which has a good visibility, is one product which everybody knows is nano urea. This IFCO's product. IFCO, everybody knows, Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative, which is into manufacturing and marketing of fertilizers. So this is revolutionized this fertilizer sector, because 500 milliliter of nano urea is equivalent to 45 kilograms of normal urea. And the consumption, which used to be 350 lakh metric ton per year, it has been reduced because of introduction of nano urea, because of which there is a saving of 600 crores. This has improved nutrient efficiency of the crop. It's eco-friendly, and this is a game changer for the farming sector. Similarly, there's an innovation by Ministry of IT, that is district level village entrepreneur societies. As we know very well, 70% of Indian population that resides in villages, and there are 3.6 lakh villages. These villages, they have a common service center. So common service centers, they are the access points for for various e-governance and business services related issues. But they have become an aggregating point. Now villagers, they raise their demand to the common service centers, and common service centers in turn send the demand to the headquarters, that district headquarters, the village level entrepreneur societies which have been created. And all the big companies, multinational or the Amazon through Flipkart, and whatever has to be delivered, it gets delivered at that level. So everybody is a beneficiary in the process. So similarly, we know about Amul. Amul is a known name all across the world. Amul is a joint venture of 3.6 million milk producers in Gujarat, and they have innovated and they have created immunity boosting products like haldi doodh, or milk laced with turmeric ice cream, then honey milk, so such kind of thing, and Amul camel milk chocolate, Amul epic ice cream. They are doing wonderful business in all these areas. Likewise, we know in the honey revolution, honey farming has started in Amreli district of Gujarat, and they have raised infrastructure and other related issues have been addressed, and the farmers are making good income out of this process. NAFED also created 65 farmers producer organizations which have created requisite infrastructure for national beekeeping and addressing the concern of honey mission. So then there's another Prime Minister Matsya Sampada Yojana, that is basically there's an app called as the e-Gopala. So this is bringing best to the livestock and the fisheries needs, how they need to be addressed, what kind of ecosystem is to be created for the fishery cooperatives, so that all these things, they thrive and they become a viable livelihood alternatives.
Thank you. I've been told we are reaching the hour, or we may cross it. So it's been a very engaging discussion, though I've not stuck to the script. I've asked questions which may have thrown some of you off. Apologize for that. But what I would like to, again, go through everyone, if you can respond, is everyone has mentioned the second part of the question dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact which we've had. So can you all maybe touch upon how, in the face of the pandemic, what are the kind of resiliency measures that cooperatives are putting in place in order to be prepared for any such future shocks? Maybe I'll start with you, Roz.
Thanks for that, Balu. So I guess what has been quite interesting here in New Zealand, as I said earlier, is that the majority of cooperatives have been classified as critical services over the last 2 years. and a lot of them actually experience growth. So even though it's been pretty challenging times, they've really been doing things to maximise the opportunities that are presented. So the future-proofing of their businesses has always been front of mind. And so what we're seeing is they're investigating and expanding into different markets for their products. So they're not just staying with one key market. So obviously for New Zealand, China's a big player. So it's how do we diversify and not just have all of our eggs in one basket. We talked about technology and investments into infrastructure. So there's been a lot of movement online, and I guess that's that real customer-facing investment in technology. And I mentioned it before about remote working and parcelling of the way that businesses deliver services. So what we're seeing is there's less reliance upon having commercial foot spaces, that people are moving into more of a mixture of remote and commercial operation. We've already heard from a number of others around that whole piece around collaboration. So what we've been working to do with our members is really to facilitate that way that they can collaborate. So how do they create critical mass to enable them to get better scale? So obviously within a cooperative, they create a scale and critical mass, but how do we actually get that size and scale with multiple cooperatives collaborating together so that they can navigate the challenges of COVID? The one that's quite interesting at the moment is we're seeing a lot more engagement by the primary sector cooperatives on how do they share data. So looking at right from the farm through to the international markets, and we're working very closely with government to see how do we actually get more of that data sharing going on and solutions in place. So again, it's all driven by technology. And we heard a bit before about the education space. So the other thing that we're doing here in New Zealand is really trying to upskill, get more education incorporated at university level. We do obviously a lot in the governance space, but I sort of liken that to the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. How do we get people coming out of tertiary education who understand the co-op model, whether they be lawyers, accountants, ending up as ministers or working in the ministries? It's really important because we still lack that knowledge, but we're really trying to build that up, and we're getting some traction there. So look, there's a lot of work being done to really try and upskill and look at how do we do things differently in a post-pandemic environment. So that's really where I see that we're building that resilience so that we're able to navigate future. I get the sense that COVID's not going away in any great hurry. So how do we actually future-proof the country from future shocks of COVID?
Thank you, Roz. And I've been told not to panic, that we still have 15 minutes. So please take your time. Sama, in the case of UAE, how are you looking at the pandemic, post-pandemic, and building resilience?
Bado, I believe COVID-19 was a wake-up call for all the players in the ecosystem of co-ops, starting from government up to the co-ops until the community individuals. For government, when COVID happened, the co-ops played a major role. They were like a base for even supporting entrepreneurship and families. So we as a government, it was a shed light to us that the co-op sector is a huge potential that would really enable our economy, the national economy, to stay stable. So this is a sector that we really need to focus on. What exactly the steps that we took post-COVID? Basically, as I mentioned, we are working now on 3 major pillars. A major reforms on the regulation and the policy. Our law basically for the co-op is we are still working with a law that was issued back in 1976. Again, that wake-up call basically really put an urgency to look into the law, the regulation environment on how can I really establish that ecosystem, the environment for co-op to really be more flexible, expand even where we can really support those co-ops when it comes from the regulatory perspective. The second pillar is, again, the ecosystem itself. When I say ecosystem, we set up a priority for us that we have to see an ecosystem that's tackling three major parts. How can I encourage the born of a co-op, the growth of a co-op, and then the scale of that co-op? So we are focusing on two major pillars, what we call as a scale up and a scale up. A scale up is basically tackling the aspect of the training, building capacity. I'm not talking about only the co-op capacity. Actually, I'm talking about the governmental entities capacity who are overseeing those co-ops. And this is where exactly I need also to build up capacities. Another aspect we are looking for is the curriculum, the academia curriculum. For now, in UAE, we don't really have a university that have a certain subject where they really teach the aspects of co-ops and the principle and so forth. And this is something that we are looking at. And the third one, as I mentioned before, which one of the major pillars as well, is raising awareness and the new identity of a co-op. So this is from the governmental perspective. Moving to the co-ops, we noticed a very good practices that has been adopted by the co-op after the COVID. So when COVID happened, for example, the General Assembly meeting, we were not able to do it physically. So everyone moved forward very quickly to collaborate with a digital platform where we really can host all the General Assemblies for the co-op. And we as a ministry, immediately we issued a resolution that allow those co-ops to proceed further with adapting that technology when they really want to proceed further with their meetings. The other thing is basically the utilization of resources. Now, the co-ops is no more taking things for granted, I would say, even from government perspective. So the utilization of resources now, and especially, by the way, we still see the impact of post-COVID. Everyone, I believe, noticed the supply chain disruptive, the increase of the prices. And this is exactly the need where actually for the past few months, we had two groups coming to us. They want to establish a co-op, one for manufacturers, the small and medium manufacturers. For the same aspect, they saw exactly the value of establishing a co-op, having several medium and small manufacturing under it. So they really can face the challenges that is associated with the increase of the prices for, let's say, the material, the freight, the logistics, even with the margins when it comes to putting their products on the shelf. So we really had a very exciting discussions with them. And one of the very interesting, I would say, a new approach that is happening here in UAE because of the food security file. There was an announcement 2 weeks back about establishing an agri-tech co-op that will grow wheat in UAE. And you guys know that our climate is not, even the region itself is not for growing wheat. But imagine that we are really proceeding into that area, because the situation right now, again, it's not only COVID, this is something that we are expecting to see the impact for the upcoming years. And this is really, again, a good wake-up call for all the stakeholders in the ecosystem, so we really can be resilient enough for any expected events in the near or even far future.
Thanks, Sama, and thanks for making the point. It's a wake-up call not only for cooperatives, but also from the government side to look at the kind of needs that cooperatives have risen to meet the needs of people. And so the importance to be given to co-ops, I think, is well taken. Edwin, how about in the Philippines? How have co-ops worked to build their resilience?
Yes, Director Balu. First of all, while the Philippine Cooperative Center, together with the federations and unions of cooperatives, lobbied for the inclusion of cooperatives in the stimulus package, in the two laws that were crafted during the pandemic, we still see that this stimulus package should continue. However, the government mentioned that the third tranche of stimulus package is unfundable. So related to that, there is a figure surrounding the Philippine government right now that we have this 12 trillion debt, 12 trillion pesos debt. So it's quite huge of money, wherein this debt is over 60% of our gross domestic product. And our budget deficit is 10% of the gross domestic product in 2021. So in connection to this, the government will find ways on how to get more revenues and find ways to continue the social servicing they have started when pandemic struck. The cooperatives are in danger of losing their tax exemption privileges. That's why in the post-pandemic or even this year, we are very vigilant that in the next administration, we will prevent another round or effort by legislators to remove these tax exemption privileges. Because as you can see, the economy of the Philippines and in all other economies of the world have not yet recovered due to this pandemic. And even the credit and financial services cooperatives have yet to fully recover from the effects of the pandemic. Thus, the Philippine Cooperative Center, together with other cooperatives, are now preparing, if ever, that the new administration, the next administration, will push for the repeal of the tax exemption privileges of cooperatives. Number two, while we have lots of programs regarding financial recovery, etc., we would like to emphasize that the cooperative sector must include in its program of action the management of depression and mental stress, both at the workplace and in their homes, on how to cope with such situation. As the impact of the COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdowns drastically affected the lives and occupations of the people. Though we managed to survive with the new normal after 2 years of struggle, actually anxiety and depression lingers in everyone due to the fear of the virus. As a result, physical and mental distress affected many among us, including the cooperative community. That's why it is important to know our body, what we eat, what we drink, what we think, because our capability to endure the condition we are currently in depends on how we groom ourselves and how we are ready to face another kind of pandemic post-COVID-19. Hence the importance of the Cooperative Health Management Federation. Hence the importance of the cooperative hospitals and other related cooperative health services in providing health and wellness programs among the cooperative sector. Take note that during the height of pandemic, the hospital bills are so high that many cannot afford to pay, except that the social subsidy coming from the government are coming in. Hence, we realize that we need to campaign among our cooperative members to become a member of the Cooperative Health Management Federation and other cooperative health insurance for that matter. And also, we should promote the role of the cooperative hospitals because these are owned by cooperative members. If you will go to a commercial hospital, your bill will be, 1 million, 2 million, and that's way beyond the capacity of an ordinary cooperative member. So we believe that while we do not pray for another pandemic to happen in the future or disaster in the future, we need to campaign for the cooperative sector to be a member of the cooperative health organization and to patronize the cooperative hospitals and further strengthen these cooperative hospitals. Thank you, Director Balu.
Thank you, Edwin. I think that's another area which is thrown up in terms of health. While prior to the pandemic, there were cooperatives working in health, but the need and urgency to look at the whole issue of health, along with it, the issue of aging, is a whole new area where I think cooperatives need to have the potential to get in and provide much more efficient and better services. And you also touched upon mental health. I think that's, again, a very important area for us to be looking at. It's not just physical, but mental toll that it's been taking on everyone, I think is very, a very relevant point. Dr. Mahajan, from India, how have cooperatives coped and how are they building their resilience?
The soon after the pandemic, the areas which I feel that they're very important for any cooperative to sustain, and I fully agree with Mr. Edwin. One is the health sector. There are not many cooperatives in the country. We need to have more and more health cooperatives. One, marketing is another area which has to be pan-India and should be in a very proper structured fashion. The way we had one NCO platform at NCO headquarters, so we are trying to replicate the same model pan-India. We are requesting all the state cooperative union to set up the same kind of platform. So the respective cooperatives existing in their areas, they can bring the produce and they can sell the produce from there itself. Then more and more emphasis on the e-commerce. There also it can be done. Digitization is another area because there is general reluctance among the cooperatives to adopt to the digital mode. So, but the current scenario is digital transformation is a need of the hour, and this should be the biggest priority with the cooperatives. So, Government of India and NCI is both laying focus for digitization and computerization of all the primary agriculture cooperative societies to start with. Another area which I feel is platform cooperative, because computing platform with using of website, mobile app, or protocol to facilitate the sale and services, because this is something which is coming up in a very big way. Platform cooperatives, they definitely form an alternative to venture capitalist funded platform. And instead of optimizing digital platform for few, it should be optimized for all. So this is another sector which our country doesn't have much, but this is an area which I feel that we should also be given the priority to.
Thank you, Dr. Mahajan. And again, there were a couple of questions from the audience which I'll put to, and each or any of the panelists feel free to take this question up. One is, they said we've talked a lot about the COVID-19 pandemic and impact, but one area where, again, the entire globe is being affected is through climate change. We are seeing the impact of climate change, which is affecting across sectors, across industries, and cooperatives again are at the forefront because majority of our members are involved in agriculture and allied activity. So are we seeing cooperatives in your respective countries in terms of looking at climate change and how they are trying to innovate in this area?
I can just add something to that conversation, Balu. Here in New Zealand, we have a climate change commission, and there's obviously been sign up to the SDG goals and the zero carbon emissions. And co-ops are very much taking a leadership role in terms of trying to achieve those outcomes. So, yeah, I mentioned before about Fonterra putting in place e-trucks. They are reducing their emissions significantly by moving away from coal-driven manufacturing. So there's a big change there, and they're obviously our biggest cooperative, so they take a big leadership role. I mentioned before about herd productivity and reduction in CO2 emissions from cow herds and also sheep production. So I think there's a lot of work going on, and absolutely Co-ops are taking a leadership role. I'll sign off there because I know there's others who've got comment to make.
Any of our other panelists on climate change and how cooperatives are responding to it?
Yeah, Balu, for a quick response to the question. Actually, in the utility sector of the cooperative sector, we are now in the phasing out of old jeepneys, where this is powered by fossil fuel, diesel, among others. So, but the cooperatives in this respect are campaigning for a just transition. That before these old jeepneys, where a lot of drivers.
Edwin, you should tell our audience what a jeepney is. For I know what a jeepney is, but
a
not
jeepney.
know.
A jeepney is a mass transportation in the Philippines. Usually, it's a where 20 people can ride. So it's a mass transportation. So we are now promoting for a just transition where the old public utility vehicle will be replaced by a modernized jeepney that is more cleaner and eventually powered by electronic jeepneys. No? But this project is still, let's say, not 100% complete, because this is just an executive or presidential order, but it's not yet a law. That's why we in the cooperative sector is pushing for the institutionalization of the public utility vehicle modernization program. Thank you, Balu.
Great. That's another area, renewables and the need to move away from coal and gas and oil to see how you can more your carbon footprint. How are you recording that? I think that's important. Thank you for that. Dr. Mahajan, Sama, any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, through our cooperative entrepreneurship development cell, we are trying to hold a webinar with the stakeholders at how cooperative and the renewable energy could be formed. Because recently I had a meeting with the ambassador of Iceland, and Iceland energy requirement, 30% of the energy requirement is being met by geothermal energy. And incidentally, they have two projects here in two different states. One is Himachal and second is J&K, where they have successfully implemented this program. So cooperatives which are already existing in these two states, we are trying to speak to them that how the geothermal energy could be tapped. And they showed us example that how homestays, where those people, they could make use of this geothermal energy, how their socio-economic transformation took place in a couple of years. So we are trying to speak to all the cooperatives. Rather, we are trying to trigger those people to form a cooperative and make use of the geothermal energy which is available in their areas. So I think these two actions would definitely lead to a bigger role. Thank you.
Sama, any thoughts from your side on?
Yeah. For us, again, as I mentioned before, maybe we are somehow in an early stage when it comes to the co-op. However, that aspect is one of our identified priority areas where starting from 2022, 2023, aligned even with our, as I mentioned before, the circular economy policy as well, where we really can combine the different aspects into that. So this is one of our priority areas for the time being. Is there any, I would say, very obvious or clear impact when it comes to cooperative contributing to the climate change? Till now, the measurement is not there. The methodology of doing that impact analysis is even not there. So this is one of our plans for the upcoming period.
Okay. Now I'll just let each of our panelists, any final thoughts that you would like to share, anything which you wanted to say but I didn't ask, feel free. We will start with you, Roz.
I guess it's really just saying that in terms of the innovation space and responding to climate change, I think New Zealand's cooperatives are definitely taking the leadership role, and we are doing a lot of engagement with our government and the academic community too. So it's really a sort of three-pronged approach: government, academics, business community, and how we can actually drive change. So yeah, it's fundamental to how business is going to be driven here.
Sama, any final thoughts?
Yeah, to me, is one sentence. Innovation is a must, it's not a luxury anymore. And this is exactly how I end up.
Thank you. Edwin?
Oh, yes. While in other countries, the cooperative movement is already advanced in terms of their share in economic development, their share in creating a just environment. In the Philippines, we still envision that the Philippine cooperative would be the model preferred by the people, and the cooperative leaders acknowledged by the government as a partner in the development of the economy, in the development of the society, where people can live in prosperity, where there is justice, and the promotion of equality is best well served if the concepts, the ideals, and the principles of cooperatives are practiced not only by the 12 million member cooperatives of the Philippines, but eventually we were able to influence and impart these principles and values to other parts of the society, particularly those who want a better world to live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. And Dr. Sudhir Mahajan?
Yeah, as I told in the beginning, that innovation is no more a privilege. This is a necessity now. So cooperatives, they have to transform from the old school to the more technological institutions. And as we know, only a couple of icons in the cooperative field. So we need to see many more. And this is going to be possible only with the innovation, with diversification, with the conduct of the business in more professional fashion, adoption of technologies, and being more digital. Thank you.
Okay. Again, thank you very much, Roz, Sama, Edwin, and Dr. Mahajan for sharing your insights. Cooperatives are over 100 years old in many countries, but then we can't just rest on our history. As you all have mentioned, the only constant is change. Innovation is a must. Innovation is a necessity. So we need to innovate, and without innovation, and we've seen that entire industries have got wiped out, be it the taxi drivers across, or be it hotels. New forms have come up and wiped out old industries. So innovation is a constant. But some of the takeaways which I heard from you all is that, one, in order for cooperatives to be relevant, we need to give emphasis on education, because we need to get newer members into the fold, and new members can come in only when we increase awareness and increase education. And one of the reasons why that's important is some of the things which we talked about, cooperative values and principles, they resonate a lot with the younger generation. They are not just looking at to a place just to go for work, but they are looking at to a place where they can contribute. They are looking to a place which can also takes care of the environment. So I think we need to ensure that the young people know more about cooperatives and we educate them. But at the same time, I think cooperatives need to also promote the entrepreneurial part of it. because cooperatives are business enterprises, and we need to see how we encourage more entrepreneurship, because again, that's something which young people are interested in, entrepreneurship, startups. So it's part of us. So how do we make sure that the entrepreneurship part is kept at the center? But again, cooperatives can't do things on their own. We need to have an ecosystem. Many of you all mentioned about the need for an ecosystem and enabling environment. So how do we look partner with the other industries, which Dr. Mahajan mentioned? How do we look at government support, which Sama mentioned? How do we look at the central authorities in terms of how do they include cooperatives in their national plans, which Edwin mentioned? And what Roz mentioned in terms of how do we ensure that we advocate we need to advocate actively, and without advocating, nobody is going to listen to us. And so it's important that it's an ecosystem approach which enables cooperative. And there is a lot of emphasis again, which was given on data. I think from Sama's case, where data is being used to analyze consumer behavior, same thing which Edwin mentioned, the need to be real time. I think data, the importance of that has been shown. So I think from what you all have said, is that innovation is a must. It's not, though the COVID-19 pandemic has really brought to the fore technology. But again, how do we, technology is only a tool. So we still need to make sure that we keep our interests of our members at the center, but see how we can enable and make ourselves more efficient so that the needs of our members can be met. So let me thank you all again for taking the time and sharing your thoughts with us. Simran, over to you for your, if you have any closing remarks.
Thank you very much, sir. No, indeed, you have summed it really well. And thanks again to all our distinguished panelists for those remarks and insights into how innovation is being practiced and carried out in your respective countries. Thanks again for taking your time out. And I would also like to convey a special thanks to Mr. Iyer for moderating this session. And goodbye, everybody, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rose.